I remember that kitchen table like it was yesterday, even though it's been 12 years. The yellow overhead light hummed above us, casting everything in this strange, cold glow that made the whole moment feel surreal. I was 22 years old, sitting across from my parents at the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together my entire life, and I'd just made the biggest decision of my life. I was turning down a stable office job at some corporation, the kind of job that came with health insurance and a 401k, and all the things responsible people were supposed to want. Instead, I was going to start my own business. I was going to repair computers and electronics. My hands shook as I told them. I could see it in their faces immediately. Dad laughed. Not a kind laugh, a mocking one that made my stomach drop. You? Running a business? You can't even fix the Wi-Fi when it goes down, he said, shaking his head like I'd just told him I was running off to join the circus. Mom just sighed deeply, a long, exhausted sigh, like she was disappointed in me for even trying. We can't keep rescuing you from your bad ideas, Eva, she said quietly, her voice full of resignation. Those words hit different than anger ever could. They weren't angry, they were worse. They were ashamed.
Ashamed of me.
I felt my chest tighten, my throat close up. Without saying much else, I packed my bag right there at that table and left the kitchen. I got in my old Honda Civic and drove away, wondering if they were right about me all along. Sitting in my old Honda Civic that night, parked outside a 7-Eleven on the edge of town, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode right through my ribs. I replayed every word they'd said, over and over again, like a broken record stuck on repeat. My dad's laugh echoing in my ears.
My mom's disappointed sigh.
My whole body felt heavy. They didn't just doubt me, they were ashamed of me. That's what hurt the most. It wasn't anger I was feeling. It was something deeper and more painful. It was knowing that the two people who were supposed to believe in me didn't. I wasn't angry at them. I was terrified they might be right. What if I failed? What if this dream was just another bad idea like all the others? What if I'd wake up 5 years from now with nothing to show for it except more disappointment? The car felt small and cold that night. I sat there for hours, staring at the parking lot lights and the convenience store sign, wondering if I had the courage to do this alone, to bet everything on something that felt so uncertain. I was scared, hungry, and completely broke, but something inside me refused to turn around and go home. I couldn't go back to that table, back to those disappointed faces, back to being the failure they'd already decided I was. So I drove forward into the darkness, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I had to try. I found a corner in my friend Marcus's garage 2 days later and asked if I could rent it cheap. He said yes without hesitation. Marcus had always been the kind of person who believed in people. That corner became my entire world. I set up a broken workbench I found at a yard sale. I slept on a cot right next to it, surrounded by broken laptops, scattered circuit boards, and tools I'd collected piece by piece. Every penny I had went into buying secondhand electronics at thrift stores and estate sales, fixing them up and selling them for just enough to buy more parts. I lived on instant noodles, eating the same salty, watery soup 3 times a day until I could barely stand the taste anymore. But it was cheap, and it kept me alive. My clothes were always dirty, my hands were constantly covered in cuts and dust, and I smelled like engine oil and desperation. Most people would have seen it as rock bottom. I saw it as the only way forward. I worked 14 hours a day, sometimes more, my fingers moving through the dark insides of computers like I was performing surgery. Every laptop I fixed felt like a small victory, a tiny proof that I could do this, that I wasn't wasting my time. I didn't have much, but I had purpose. I had direction. That's what kept me going through those cold garage nights. One afternoon in my 3rd month in that garage, a single mother came through the garage door with tears streaming down her face like a river. She was holding an old laptop that looked like it had been through a war. The screen was cracked, the keyboard was stained, and the power cord was held together with tape. She explained to me that her husband had died 6 months ago in a car accident, and all their family photos, thousands of them, were locked on this computer. The hard drive had crashed after a power surge, and she thought they were gone forever. She tried taking it to other repair shops, and they'd all told her the data was lost. She was losing hope. I looked at her face and saw my purpose staring back at me. This wasn't just about fixing a computer. This was about saving memories. This was about helping someone hold on to the most precious things in their life. I told her I would try, even though I wasn't sure I could succeed. I worked on that laptop for 3 days straight. I didn't sleep more than an hour total. I barely ate anything. I just focused on getting those files back, on recovering what had been lost. I used every technique I knew. I tried every method I'd taught myself. And finally, on the 3rd day, the files started appearing on my screen. Hundreds of photos, videos, memories. I called her and told her to come back immediately. When she arrived and I showed her the recovered files, her children's faces at birthday parties, her wedding photos, her husband's smile frozen in time, she broke down crying. Then she hugged me so hard I could barely breathe, and she whispered, "You just saved my memories. You saved my life." That moment changed something fundamental inside me. I realized this wasn't just about fixing computers anymore. It was about fixing people's lives. It was about helping people hold on to what mattered most. That's when I knew this could be something real and important. My dad showed up at the garage without warning one Tuesday morning in my 4th month. I was elbow deep in circuit boards and soldering iron fumes when he walked through the door. He looked around at the mess, tools scattered everywhere, parts organized on old shelves, the tiny corner that was my entire operation and my bedroom combined. His face went dark immediately, like he was looking at a disaster. "This is your big dream?" he asked, his voice cold and cutting. "You're wasting your life out here, Eva. This is pathetic. When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" I felt the old hurt rise up in my chest, that familiar sting of his disappointment, but this time it was different. This time, I had something to stand on. I had the recovered photos from that single mother who'd sent me a thank you card that I kept on my workbench. I had the growing list of regular customers. I had proof. I looked him in the eye, even though my hands were shaking, and said quietly, "Not anymore, Dad. Not this time." He didn't know what to do with that answer. He just stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenching, then he turned and walked back toward the door. Before he left, he said, "I hope you're right." But there was no belief in his voice, only resignation. I went back to my work, my hands steady despite the emotion coursing through me, my heart steady for the first time in months. I wasn't doing this for him anymore. I wasn't doing it to prove him wrong or to show him up. I was doing it because it mattered. I was doing it because I believed in it. Word spread fast through the neighborhood like wildfire. It started with the single mom telling her friends about me and what I'd done for her family. Then those friends told their friends, and those friends told more people. Soon, neighbors started dropping off broken phones, old tablets, computers that had stopped working years ago. I fixed them fast, I fixed them cheap, and I treated every person who came through that door like they mattered. Because they did. Every person who walked through that garage entrance was somebody with a story. Every broken device was a chance to help, a connection to people's lives and memories. I started earning enough money that by month 8, I could move out of Marcus's garage and find a tiny storefront 3 blocks away. It was barely bigger than a closet, with a small window and a door that stuck when it rained, but it was mine. I painted the walls clean white with leftover paint Marcus had, and I made a simple sign out of wood and black letters. Renew Tech. Business started growing exponentially. I hired my first real employee, a young woman named Marcus Jr., who needed a chance like I did, who had the same hungry look in her eyes that I saw in the mirror every morning. The money was still tight, incredibly tight, but for the first time, I could see a real future taking shape. I wasn't just surviving anymore.
I was building something.
But then reality hit me like a punch to the stomach one quiet Thursday morning. The bills kept piling up faster than I could pay them. Rent for the storefront. Parts and supplies that weren't cheap. Taxes I didn't know how to pay correctly. Insurance. Equipment maintenance. Everything was eating away at my profits like a virus consuming a system. I maxed out my credit card. Then I got a second credit card and maxed that out too. One slow month, I calculated, and I could lose everything. I'd have to close the shop. I'd have to lay off my employee. I'd have to admit defeat. I laid awake at night on the cot in the back room, doing math in my head over and over again, trying to figure out how to keep the doors open. My anxiety would spike at 3 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. That's when the old voice came back, loud and clear. My parents' voice. Their doubt. Their certainty that I was wasting my time. Maybe they were right, I thought desperately. Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe I should go back and get a real job, admit defeat, and let them take care of me. I was so close to giving up. I was so close to walking away and making that phone call home. Then one phone call changed everything. A local middle school called me out of nowhere on a Friday afternoon. The principal explained that they needed 40 laptops repaired for their student technology program, computers that had broken down during the school year and were desperately needed for the next semester. The budget was decent and the timeline was tight, 2 weeks to complete everything. I knew if I turned this down, I might never get another opportunity like it. I would lose momentum, lose hope, lose everything I'd been building. So I said yes. I took it on. I worked 16-hour days for 2 weeks straight, basically living at the shop. I didn't go home. I didn't see my friends. I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night, and those hours were usually on the floor next to my workbench. My body felt like it was made of pain and exhaustion. My eyes burned from staring at screens. My back ached from bending over computers. But I kept going because I had to. Every laptop I fixed was another reason to keep pushing. Every one was another step toward survival. When I finally delivered all 40 computers to the school, carefully packed and working perfectly, the principal shook my hand firmly and told me I'd done incredible work. She said other principals had heard about what I'd done, and they were already calling to ask if I could help them too. The paycheck was enough to pay off my credit card debt completely. It was enough to cover 3 months of rent. It was enough to save my business. Standing in that schoolyard, watching those kids set up their new computers, learning and creating with tools I'd fixed, I cried. I actually cried. Not from sadness, not from weakness, but from relief, from hope, from knowing I wasn't going to fail. But I didn't celebrate with money. I didn't buy a new car or fancy clothes or expensive equipment. I still lived simply, eating ramen noodles most nights, wearing secondhand clothes from thrift stores, working long hours without complaint. I could have changed my life in obvious ways, but I didn't want to. Every simple meal felt like a victory. Every long workday felt like proof that I was building something real and honest and worth doing. I watched other people my age buying nice things, living flashy lives on social media, and I wasn't jealous. I was focused. I was content with what I had because what I had was enough. Every repair felt like a small victory, like another brick in the wall of something that would last. Every happy customer was motivation to keep going. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my parents or anyone else. I was just trying to do good work and help people improve their lives. That mindset kept me grounded and hungry. It kept me moving forward even when things got difficult. Years passed and life kept moving forward. Birthdays came and went, and my parents barely texted me. On my 25th birthday, Mom sent me a short message. Hope you're okay. That was it. No phone call. No birthday cake waiting at the house.
No celebration.
I wasn't angry anymore. I was too focused on building something real to waste energy on resentment. I didn't have time to resent them or feel sorry for myself. They were living their lives in their way, and I was living mine in my way. We existed in separate worlds that rarely touched. Sometimes I thought about calling them, about reaching out, but I didn't know what to say. I was afraid I'd hear doubt in their voices again, and I wasn't sure I could handle it. The distance between us had become so big and so wide that I didn't know how to close it anymore. So I didn't try. I just kept working. I kept fixing computers. I kept helping people. That was enough for me. The company was growing steadily month after month. My reputation was growing. My community of customers was growing. And so was I as a person and as a business owner. By year 5, I was ready to take the next big step. I hired my first 2 real employees beyond my original hire, 2 other young women who reminded me so much of myself. They were quiet. A fire broke out in the strip mall where my main shop was located, starting in a restaurant next door and spreading quickly. Firefighters rushed in to battle the blaze, but by the time they got it under control, my entire store was destroyed. Laptops melted, tools scattered and burned. Years of work, just gone in smoke and flames. I stood outside watching the smoke rise into the sky, the acrid smell of burning plastic and metal filling my nose, and I thought, this is it. This is the end. This is where I finally fail. The insurance barely covered half the damage, and I had no backup plan. I had no emergency fund large enough to rebuild from this. I was broken, scared, and wondering if this was finally the moment when my parents turned out to be right about me all along. That night, I drove home and just sat in the dark of my apartment. I didn't cry. I was too numb to cry. I just sat there on the floor, thinking about all the work, all the sleepless nights, all the struggling, all the sacrifice.
Gone.
Destroyed.
Just like that.
I thought about calling my parents and admitting defeat, asking for help, proving them right. But then something incredible happened that changed everything again. That single mom, the one who'd come to me all those years ago with her dead husband's photos, she heard about the fire on social media. She reached out to other customers I'd helped over the years. She organized a community fundraiser. She called people whose broken computers I'd fixed. She posted on social media about what I'd done for them. Neighbors, customers, people I'd helped over the years without expecting anything in return. They all showed up. They donated money. They organized volunteer days to help me clean up and rebuild. Dozens of people chipped in, and within a week, I had enough money to reopen. Teachers whose school computers I'd saved. Single mothers whose family photos I'd recovered. Elderly people whose devices I'd repaired for free because money was tight. When I realized what they'd done, I wasn't buying mansions or yachts, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I was proud. Every decision I made thinking about helping people. Every expansion, every hire, every new location was about creating more opportunities to serve. I thought about my parents sometimes, but less and less as time went on. We'd moved past each other so completely that it felt like we lived in different realities, different universes almost. I'd made peace with that distance. Or, at least, I thought I had. I'd accepted that we were separate and that maybe we always would be. Then my mother called one Thursday evening, and everything changed again. Her voice was shaking on the phone, trembling with worry and fear. The paint was fading on the sides. The lawn needed work. The gutters were sagging. Dad was limping toward the door when I arrived, moving slowly, like every step hurt him deeply. There was pride in his eyes and guilt too, and confusion about what this moment meant. He didn't know how to look at me. I was his daughter, but I was also the person he doubted. I was the person who'd proven him wrong. There was something broken in that dynamic that I wasn't sure we could fix. We hugged awkwardly in the doorway, not quite comfortable but trying. My mom came behind him, tears already in her eyes before I even fully entered the house. She held me tight and didn't let go for a long time. We sat together in that small house, and for the first time in years, we were actually in the same room as a family. The distance between us was still there. I could feel it like a weight, but it didn't feel as big as it had before. Over dinner, roast chicken and vegetables, just like Mom used to make. My dad said something he'd never said before in all my life. "You proved me wrong, sweetheart," he told me, looking directly in my eyes for the first time that evening. I could see it cost him something significant to say that. The words came out slow and heavy. I smiled softly, warmly, and reached across the table to put my hand on his. "You weren't wrong, Dad," I told him carefully. I just needed time. I needed to figure it out on my own. Maybe I needed to struggle to understand what really mattered in life. He nodded slowly, absorbing those words. "You did good, honey. You really did," he said, and this time there was belief in his voice. We talked late into the night, sitting at that same kitchen table where this all began. Not about the business, not about money, but about life. About choices. about how we're all just trying our best with what we know, about how sometimes parents make mistakes and daughters need to go their own way. The tension that had lived between us for so long, like a wall we couldn't climb, started to melt just a little. Not completely, some things can't be fully repaired, but it melted enough. By the end of that long night, there was something that felt like real respect between us. Not the kind that comes from perfection, but the kind that comes from understanding each other finally. That night, I heard them whispering in the kitchen after I'd said I was going to sleep. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the walls were thin, and their voices carried. They were talking about maybe selling the house, about how expensive everything had become, about property taxes and home repairs and medical bills, about how they weren't sure what the future looked like anymore. They weren't proud people in that conversation, they were just tired, scared, wondering if they'd be okay, if they'd end up broke and alone. It broke my heart, honestly, hearing them like that. These were my parents. They'd raised me. They'd made mistakes, sure, but they'd also done their best with what they had. They'd kept a roof over my head and food on the table. Now they were facing a future they couldn't control, and it was terrifying them. I realized something important in that moment. This was my chance. Not to prove anything to them, not to show them up or make them feel bad about doubting me. This was my chance to do something real. Something that mattered. Something that would give them peace. The next day, I visited a retirement community on the other side of town, a place I'd heard about from a customer. It was beautiful in every way that mattered. There were gardens where people could sit and think and watch the seasons change. There was music playing in the common areas, soft piano music and jazz. There was medical care on site, good food prepared, fresh daily activities and social events, and most importantly, there was warmth. Real community. I walked through the halls and imagined my parents here. Safe. Comfortable. Cared for. No more worrying about bills or roof repairs or medical emergencies. No more struggling to maintain a house that was too much for them. Just peace and dignity and proper care. I talked to the manager, and we discussed possibilities. We talked numbers and floor plans and care options. I calculated what it would cost to set them up there for the rest of their lives. It was significant, more than significant, but not impossible. My company was doing well enough. I could do this. I wanted to do this. I spent a week setting everything up quietly, making phone calls and signing papers in my office at the main store. I talked to my accountant, signed contracts, and made arrangements through my company. I told my accountant to list it as a corporate donation, no publicity, no big announcement. I didn't want credit or praise. I just wanted my parents to be okay. I didn't want them to feel like they owed me something. I just wanted them to have peace. The paperwork was finished by Friday afternoon. Everything was arranged. Everything was paid for and secured. My parents had no idea. They thought they were going to have to sell their house and figure things out on their own somehow. They had no idea I'd already figured it out for them. I felt nervous and excited at the same time, like I was about to give them the greatest gift of my life. I told my parents I'd found a place that would make things easier for them, somewhere they could relax and not worry. They resisted immediately, both of them shaking their heads. My dad's pride was wounded by the very idea. "We don't need charity," he said firmly, his jaw clenching. "We'll figure it out ourselves." My mom just looked sad and uncertain. "We'll be okay," she said, but I could hear the doubt underneath every word. I sat with them both in that living room and spoke quietly but seriously, making sure they understood I meant every word. "You took care of me for 22 years, I told them. "You fed me when I was hungry. You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go. You did everything parents are supposed to do. You gave me life. Let me return the favor. Let me take care of you now. That's what family does. That's what love means." My dad's eyes got wet with tears he didn't want to shed. He didn't argue anymore. My mom reached over and held my hand tight. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. They understood finally. The day they arrived at the retirement community was bright and full of possibility. The staff greeted them by name. Every staff member seemed to know who they were and what they liked. Everything was personalized. Everything was ready and waiting. My parents walked through the doors of their new home, and I watched their faces transform from confusion to understanding to overwhelming emotion. It was beautiful to see. My dad whispered, "This must cost a fortune, honey." I put my hand on his shoulder and said gently, "It's already paid for. By Renew Tech.
By me.
By everything we've built together in this life." My mother burst into tears, the good kind of tears. She hugged me so tight, I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," she kept saying over and over. "I'm so sorry we doubted you. I'm so sorry we weren't there." I held her and told her it was okay. It really was. Standing in that beautiful place, surrounded by kind people, with my parents finally safe and comfortable and cared for, I realized something profound. This was success. Not the money, not the company, not proving them wrong. This was it. This was what mattered. I walked through one of my Renew Tech stores today, watching the young women technicians working at their stations with focused energy. They were careful, treating every device like it mattered, like it was important. Because to them, it is. Just like it mattered to me. I thought about that night in my car, broke and humiliated and terrified, wondering if my parents were right about me. I thought about the garage, the ramen noodles, the 16-hour workdays, the fire that almost destroyed everything, the single mom and her dead husband's photos, the school principal, the community fundraiser, all of it. Every moment brought me to this point. I smiled, but not in revenge or anger, just in peace, in gratitude, in understanding. They said I'd never succeed, but I defined what success really meant. It wasn't about proving them wrong or showing them up. It was about helping people, and if you're watching this and someone told you that you couldn't do something, that you weren't good enough, that you'd never make it, I'm here to tell you that they might be wrong. Define success for yourself. Don't let anyone else decide what that means for you. Success isn't a destination. It's the journey of becoming who you want to be and lifting others up along the way. Now, if you've made it this far with my story, please subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling. Someone who's been told they can't. And remember, it's never too late to prove the doubters wrong. But more importantly, it's never too late to become the person you want to be. It's never too late to show love to the people you care about. Thank you so much for watching.